So we're wrapping up what is easily the craziest week of trading I've ever seen, right? The intraday swings this week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday especially, some of the largest intraday ranges we've ever seen in the markets, the S&P 500, the NASDAQ. It was almost impossible to trade and make money in this kind of market. You just can't, because the swings are so wild. You're getting killed on the downside and you try to protect yourself on the downside, and then you get that immediate swing up, like on Wednesday where we got like a 1,700 point reversal or whatever it was in the NASDAQ. Oh my goodness. So everybody that was selling calls then got murdered on their calls. This has been very challenging, right? This whole, really the last couple of months with all of the tariffs talks and especially this last week. And it's not fun because we're all losing money. We've all lost a lot of money, but there are lessons to be learned. I did want to talk a little bit about that for those of you that traded through this and are still in the game. There are some takeaways, hopefully, that we can all learn. I think one of the most obvious, and anybody that talks about trading and investing in a responsible way, anybody that tries to be a teacher, like, I try to, give you guys some words of wisdom. We always talk about, trading small, don't get too big. I think number one, one of the biggest things to take away from this past week is that size kills. You hear people say that all the time in trading. Size kills. And that's absolutely true. Anybody that went into this week, for example, already using 70, 80% or more of their buying power, almost certainly faced a margin call at some point this week. It was you were too big, right? You were way too big going into this. And this is, just if you faced a margin call, just treat it as a learning lesson. It's one of those things, hey, you know what? I screwed up. I'm not going to do that again, right? In the future, I always give a rule of don't use more than 50% of your buying power if you can, and matter of fact, only using, 40 to 45%, stay under 50%. Most of the time you'll be good. Even in a severe like downturn in the market like we had, I was never really in trouble on buying power. Yes, my buying power went up, but it wasn't much of a problem. I got into like 70 or 75% buying power being used at one point, and I had to make some adjustments to bring it down a little bit. But that's the number one thing, is that size kills. And if you ever doubted it, many of you were taught that lesson this week. Another thing that I often talk about, and I know a lot of traders don't want to hear this message, but short time frames also kill, right? If you had a really short dated trade, something that was expiring in the next few days or even in the next couple of weeks, there wasn't a lot you could do with those positions. As if it was a defined risk trade, there were probably immediately max losers. There's no point in you even trying to defend them at that point. If it was undefined risk trades, obviously you have to defend it in some way. You can't just sit there on a naked put or a naked call that's getting killed, right? You have to defend it. But you can't. There's so little time left in the trade and you're so far underwater. There's no way for you to roll out in time. You're not going to be able to roll for a credit. These short dated trades really limit you as far as defensive tactics should things go wrong. Anything that's got at least a month of time left on it, 30 days, you can defend those. And certainly anything that's got like 2 months, 60 days worth of time on it, you're probably okay. Matter of fact, with 60 DTE trades, even if your short puts, for example, are going against you in a big way with so much time left on it, you're not in that much trouble. You can wait it out. You've got plenty of time just to sit on it and see what happens. If you get a sign, you get a sign, but chances are you don't know where the market's going to be in 2 months. You might be okay on that trade. If you've got something that's expiring this Friday, though, you're kind of screwed. It's one of those things. I always tell you guys, I don't do like weekly options. I don't do 0 DTE trades either. And the reason is because those types of trades, those short dated trades, they either work for you or they don't. If they don't work for you, there's not a damn thing you can do about it. And I think one final lesson we all learned, especially this last week, it's one that I certainly learned. And I don't always adhere to this, but sometimes sitting on your hands and not trading at all is the better play. right? And that's this week with all of these crazy intraday swings where the market's moving up, and the S&P 500 was moving like 50 points up and down in seconds, crazy moves. And if you're sitting there trying to defend naked puts that have gone against you or naked strangles that have gone against you, and you're trying to change strikes or roll up and down, roll out in time, and all of this, it's a nightmare. In many cases, you're getting bad fills, you're getting bad prices on some of these defensive measures you're trying to employ. In the end, you're making things worse. Sometimes you're rolling to a new position that, when the market completely reverses in the next couple of seconds, right, which was what was happening on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday, then you're like, damn, I didn't even need to make that roll. I made that roll, it cost me all this money. I didn't even need to do that. As a matter of fact, I cost myself money rolling to the new position. So a lot of times, especially when the market is extremely volatile like it is, right now, there were a couple of days this past week where I made no trades, and I had a lot of positions that were very deep in the money. Typically, those are the kinds of days where I spend a lot of time trying to make adjustments, trying to defend things. There were a couple of days, especially Tuesday and Wednesday this past week, where I did nothing. And it was the right play because of the way the market acted those days. I would have screwed myself in a big way trying to, play those crazy intraday swings. So in the end, I know I've certainly learned some lessons this week. Most of you guys, I'm sure, have learned a lot. This is something we can take forward because, many of us are going to trade probably for the rest of our lives, right? We're always going to be doing something. We're going to actively manage our money. And, going through these kinds of scary events, they're scary at the time, but now that you've been through it, say 5-10 years down the road, we get into some similar kind of event. You see a market that acts like this, you'll be a bit better prepared. Food for thought. Peace, guys.